Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tonic podcast. My name is Drew. I'm joined by my friend and co host Alex. And today we're going to be talking about Biden's first month in the presidency. It's March 2nd at the time of this recording. We've had a little over a month since he's been inaugurated. And while it is still early to give an overall grade, of course, we do want to check in with what he's been doing with his first month. He had a lot of bold plans, at least in his view, at the beginning, and we want to see where he's at, how the country's responding, and what we think it's going to mean for the future of Joseph Biden's administration and the United States as a whole. Alex, good to see you, man. Looking fresh, looking clean. Hope it's not too cold up there in your area. But how you doing?
Hey, not too bad, man. Just off today, so hanging out. And, it's actually been sunny and nice outside, so I'm kind of happy about that. I've been kind of having this weird anxiety about what happens when the pandemic is over and I actually have to go out and just be openly social with everyone again. It's like I'm gonna need some time to kind of readjust to going out all the time, because I'm kind of getting used to being at home and just kind of enjoying, work and life. And yeah, so it'll be interesting. How are you?
Yeah, that adjustment is going to be huge. I'm like itching to travel and stuff. I mean, you and I had a trip planned back last year in May, and we had to cancel it. So I mean, I'm itching to get out there, and so is the rest of the country. So let's actually bring that to the topic at hand. I think one of the first things, and I will still argue one of the main reasons I think Joe Biden won the election was because of his conversation around COVID, his promises around getting the country back on track as far as combating COVID and vaccinations and all that. That was a big part in a lot of campaign promises. He wanted to say science is back. We're taking it seriously. We want to put the experts first again. So let's look at what's going on. Currently, what I'm looking at is just a place called ourworldinData.org. And it looks like Israel is in the top for COVID vaccinations doses administered per 100 people, followed by the UAE, then the United Kingdom, and then the United States. And then pretty much everyone else is significantly farther after that. We're beating the European Union as a whole significantly, and we're beating out everyone else in North America. So to me, that's at least a good sign with COVID. However, the other stat that we need to take account for is since Biden's taken office, we've had another excess of 100,000 deaths of COVID, bringing the total up to 500,000 deaths. So while that continues to climb, we're also, we're kind of at the crossroads of the battle, and the vaccinations continue to climb. So I'm starting to see some hope in regards of COVID, but I wanted to get your thoughts. How do you think Joseph Biden's doing with COVID?
With COVID, I would say I'm quite happy. Later, obviously, we'll get into some of the other stuff, which I'm actually pretty unhappy about. But so far, in terms of COVID, I think if you forgot everything else Biden's done so far, or even in potentially the next 4 years, just if they can get COVID under control and get everyone vaccinated, I think a lot of the nation would be happy, myself included. And so far, it's looking really good. Now we have 3 vaccines approved inside of the United States. And they keep pushing closer and closer those numbers now. I remember for a while it was going to be late 2021, potentially early 2022, when we'd get a majority of Americans vaccinated. And now we're looking at May, June, which is huge. And I think the interesting number with especially this new Johnson & Johnson vaccine is, though it's only in the mid 60%, in terms of helping you not even get COVID, it's in terms of not dying or being hospitalized, it's almost 100% effective. And it's effective with the variants, where the other ones haven't been tested with the variants yet. So I'm really happy, Drew, on that front. The only thing I would say is that I think people like Anthony Fauci, who I've loved, through this whole thing, I think he needs to be a little more optimistic. And I think that's the one issue with the whole Biden administration, is they do need to be a little more optimistic, because if you're someone on the fence about getting vaccinated and you're being told, well, you're still going to need to wear a mask, you're still not going to be able to have a huge gathering until 2022 or something, I think it might make someone say, I'm young, why should I get a vaccine? And so I know that, obviously our lives are going to start improving, and the experts know that, but they're trying to be cautious. But I think we should balance caution with optimism. And I think sometimes the public health experts aren't good at that, which, again, that's not really their job to be optimistic. But I do think the administration could be better about encouraging people to get the vaccine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. I mean, I think we're not quite at the phase yet where it's like open to the public. Perhaps that problem may not be as big of a problem once it's into the set part where we're like open season. But I still think the cats, like, we still don't fully understand how many people are willing to take the vaccine or not, because right now it's only gone through the first, like, most important people, right? Medical field, like seniors in hospice and stuff, and now it's going through the ranks of the frontline workers. So I see what you're saying. I mean, maybe they do need to figure more about the messaging about the public taking the vaccine, but we're not. We're not quite there yet. You know what I mean?
True.
Because, like, I mean, I go to CVS and they have these massive signs that say, "We don't have the vaccine. Please stop asking about it. They will eventually." And I'm in line for one of those. Like, I'm gonna be that guy in line who gets it, with the public, second to last or whatever, because I'm not a frontline worker in the health industry. But I mean, overall, yeah, I think that as far as the vaccination ramp up, the fact that you said you already said it, Johnson & Johnson has a new vaccine. It seems like the government is working with multiple companies to fast track some of these approvals and get them out and get them manufactured in high rates. And like you had already mentioned a little bit, they keep moving the schedule up, which is very, very rare in government at all, like, in general. Very, very commonly, they set out a project and they almost always push back the date. If you're from the LA area and have anything to do with highway construction, that's very true. But this seems like they keep moving it up. And now I'm reading an article came out today that Biden now says the U.S. will have enough vaccine for every adult by the end of May. And that doesn't mean every adult will have the vaccine by the end of May, but it will be available. Like, there will be manufactured for every adult by the end of May. And he goes on to say that they expect people to actually have all their vaccines in the summer. So that's really, I think that's really good. I hope that is the case, right? Obviously, we still have to get through that, but I think what I see is a signaling from the government that this administration is taking the COVID very seriously. And I wanted to address the other parts of COVID, like how Biden is trying his best to open schools up by having teachers now be on the higher up in the priority list to get vaccinations. And I think that's a really smart move. I think anyone you ask out there, teachers by the end of March, you get first jab. Oh, yeah, okay. So someone in the comments just mentioned it as well. Yeah, I think it's a really smart move. Move teachers up. I think everyone understands that schooling from home is pretty ineffective. A whole generation of kids are just missing out on a year. So get the teachers back in. Get the kids back in school. Get everyone associated with education vaccinated quicker. And I see that happening, and it seems like that's a priority of Biden's administration. So I think that's a smart move.
Absolutely. And when I was teaching in Spain last year, I mean, I firsthand saw that, like, you're going to have certain kids with resources and good parenting that are probably going to actually go above and beyond during this time. But the problem is you're going to have a lot of kids who are going to fall behind, whether it's through laziness or just lack of resources, bad family environment. I agree with you. Like, I was teaching English in Spain. I had the kids, in March, their English was really improving. By June, they could barely speak English again. It's just really hard for things like math and language to do over the computer, and it's hard when parents have jobs and lives and potential family issues to deal with. So I agree with you. I think it just all comes down to resources and kind of balancing state and federal issues and unions, which have sometimes been a roadblock for opening schools and sometimes not. But it does seem like things are getting better on that front. So I agree with you. It's good to see that that's progressing.
Cool.
Should we do the relief package while we're into COVID?
Still kind of COVID. So yeah, COVID related. Let's get into the relief package. This is probably one of Biden's biggest immediate domestic challenges. Obviously, it's a piece of legislation, so he can only do so much. He can only promote a package, and then it gets finangled and earmarked by Congress and then passed through that, which it has already. The House of Representatives passed the COVID stimulus bill, the $1.9 trillion, and now we're looking at its will it survive the Senate with certain provisions. But this is a big thing, right? Because a vast majority of Americans still feel that they need some sort of COVID stimulus. It's a highly popular piece of legislation overall, and now there's some, but there is some roadblocks and some nitty gritty that have been kind of muddying the waters, and I wanted to get into a little bit of that. So, one is the direct payments that where Biden had originally promised $2,000 now takes into account the $600 everyone got a little bit ago. So now the current one will be $1,400. Some people are pissed off about that, as well as the increase in minimum wage hike. There is a push by progressive liberals to add a minimum wage increase to $15 in this COVID stimulus bill. The Biden administration has said publicly that they wanted that to happen, but has backed away from pushing it in the Senate, as senators like Joe Manchin and other less progressive Democrats have argued that they wouldn't vote for it with the $15 minimum wage. So there's this minimum wage conflict that's getting attached onto this COVID bill. Alex, what do you make of that, and what do you see?
Well, first things first, I just wanted to go off what's actually like all the specifics in the package, because I am fine with about half of them and have serious problems with the other half.
Okay.
So I first just want to say that I don't see this bill going through the Senate and passing right now. And by the time they actually figure this out, I think it's going to be April, maybe late April. And it's not a good look for Biden, because, you know, he did, like you said, he promised $2,000 checks. Now it's down to $1,400. And the idea of a relief package is to get relief out quickly. And so, you know, so there's two parts of this bill. There's the, you know, pandemic stuff, $1,400 checks, a lot of aid for state and local governments who, you know, had to put off people during the pandemic. There's also rent relief, money for vaccines and testing, which, you know, is great because it's actually going to encourage people to get back out there and spend money, which is kind of important. And then there's also money to reopen schools. And that stuff, I think both sides more or less agree on. Obviously, they probably have disagreements on the price tag, but that stuff I think is pretty bipartisan. But the second part, to me, seems like a wish list for structural change for a lot of more progressive Democrats. And it's stuff that just a lot of even moderate Democrats don't agree with. I mean, you have tax credits to fight child poverty, which, agree with it or not, I don't know if this is properly the time to do it, because the right is going to call it welfare. The progressives are going to call it necessary. You have an increase in the minimum wage, which, like you mentioned, and you also have transportation aid in some cities like San Francisco. And, you know, the rationale here is kind of basically you want to spend a lot because who knows if you're going to get a second chance to do it, which I understand. But the problem is that I think this is like going against the idea of a relief package, and it's going to maybe muddle the waters if we ever need to do something quick down the road. Like, sometimes government needs to be efficient, and adding all of these extras to a bill that just needs to be passed. Like, let's look at it. You know, the $1,400 payments are popular. Money towards vaccines and schools and testing is popular. I don't think a minimum wage in some parts of the country is popular. I don't think transportation infrastructure spending, potential child welfare programs, like those, it's just not the time, in my opinion. And, you know, it was Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, but now it's also, what's his name, Mark Warner out of Virginia. You have Angus King out of Maine, who's an independent. And the problem is they just don't have the votes to pass it unless, you know, some conservatives come over. And yeah, it's just a rant aside. Like, I don't think it's going to pass right now. And by the time they agree on what to pass, Americans are going to be struggling. And that's against the point of relief. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things. I think there's an end to an extension on unemployment benefits that ends March 14th. So they really do have a deadline before, pardon my French, shit hits the fan for a lot of people.
Right.
So they are pressed to move. So I hear your argument for that. The progressive argument I keep hearing from